name's Rudy, and we're here at LXJS 2014 in Lisbon. And joining me now is TJ Fontaine, the lead engineer from Joins on the Node.js project.
That's right.
And so what we want to have just a nice casual chat about where Node.js is now, where it's going, what the adoption is within the enterprise and how things are picking up in that world. And so let's start off. You joined about a year ago, just over a year and a bit ago.
Yep. In February of last year, I packed up my life, put it in my car, and drove across the country out to San Francisco.
And any regrets so far?
No regrets. It's been a fantastic experience.
Great. So in the Node community, we talk about version numbers. So you joined at version what?
I joined at 0.8. I joined, but I was using I started using Node at 0.4 and was participating in the 0.5.6 development cycle.
Cool. So you mentioned just before about 0.4 being God version. So talk us through where it is today, where it's going, what from the days of 0.4 and a lot of the good stuff and all the stuff that's happened since. That's really benefited the language and the challenges you faced and
Sure.
And where you see us going now.
Yeah, so between 0.4 and 0.10, where we are now, we've grown up a significant amount. There's been a huge adoption increase, and as part of that, Node's been maturing significantly in its release cycle and in its path forward for its APIs. So leading up to 0.4 and even into 0.6, there was a lot of API changes that would happen pretty quickly for people, and people kind of had a negative reaction to that. So their upgrades to 0.8 were kind of painful, and the upgrade from 0.8 to 0.10 was less painful. And that's kind of where we've been going with our release cycles, of being able to get less pain when you're upgrading, but have confidence that what you're working on is going to continue working on with new versions of Node. So with 0.12, which is imminent, we're trying to make sure that when we do release it, you're not going to be spending a month or 2 months updating all of your code base, and you're just going to be able to hit the ground running, and they're not going to be a bunch of subtle mistakes that you have to go through and fix.
Great. And so within my organization, I mean, we've adopted Node quite heavily within the enterprise, and we're continuing to do so. I guess without, again, playing buzzword bingo a little bit here, Internet of Things and the adoption of Node within that space is slowly starting to, it's getting a lot of recognition in that space, and as such, it's starting to become a lot more mainstream within large organizations and its uptake. How are you guys finding that? I mean, it's changing a little bit. So it's gone away from the hobbyist kind of, hardcore JavaScript guy who's always been interested in getting it, perfect back into the enterprise and the tool set associated with that. And how are you guys finding that within Joint and dealing with it?
Yeah, so we have a ton of conversations with enterprises right now, especially around all of the roadshow that we've been working on. But we go and we talk to these enterprise companies, and we see two kinds of adoption phases. One where you have people who are just kind of new to JavaScript or new to Node, and they're just trying to decide what project should I use this internally with. They're trying to identify how can I use this within Node, and being like, we are mostly Java people, or we're mostly .NET people. How do we start training ourselves, and how do we get buy-in from our fellow engineers? Other places, we have people who are like, we've actually got great buy-in from all the engineers. Everybody's excited for it, but now we're having a problem with operations. And their questions are like, it's so new, how do we run it? How do we have faith in what it's doing? So a lot of what I've been working on is enabling frameworks and tracing platforms to be able to get that information from an operations standpoint, as well as getting faith in the tooling. So like MDB for core dumps. So you can go through and do post-mortem analysis and be able to understand when your process died, what the memory state was and what your stack was, and be able to know that without being lost in a different world and only having maybe standard error output to get from that. So we've been working on improving that tooling in as many places as we can, and to help on the operations side. From the engineering uptake side, it's really a socialization process of making sure everybody can get there. And for Node, we're trying to improve our documentation as fast as possible, because it's one of the easiest ways to convince people that it's safe to adopt, is when they know they can read official documentation about how to achieve their goal. They have the confidence to actually adopt it.
Absolutely. And so talking about, you mentioned Node Road and Join's getting a lot more into that space of trying to get out there and start talking a lot more about Node. And we have Node Road coming up on Sunday here in Lisbon. I'll be joining you on stage.
Our first international stop.
And it's great. And so, I mean, there's a lot of that going on. So you're talking about documentation, but outside of the technology stack, I know you've been quite active in this. How much? What else are you guys doing in terms of reaching out to the enterprises? Are you Are you approaching people directly, or what is the kind of roadmap there looking for? Getting people involved and getting the conversation started.
Exactly. So the idea was we wanted to reach out. So we go through existing meetup structures. We go into neighborhoods of Node and talk to them and be like, we're going to put on this event. We're going to bring you production stories about Node, so that you can take that back to your organization or to your startup, however you are approaching Node. Be like, look at these people doing amazing things with Node. Look how we can be successful. So that's like kind of at the start, and I use that mechanism with the Q&A period to actually get feedback from the audience and the mixer beforehand to find out what's working for Node, what are their use cases. But we also then go in and talk to companies on a personal scale of being like, how are your engineers adopting Node? How did you find the adoption path work for you? What were your pain points? Where could it have been easier for you? What were those things? So when you're talking to companies in a more personal aspect, you can get more direct feedback. They're more open with you, as opposed to out in the public, they're kind of like, I'm not sure what I'm allowed to share with you. So when you're in this intimate session, they're very candid with you about where Node is working for them, where it's not. It's incredibly valuable for Node as a project, because then we know where we need to be moving forward and having that information. But the other great benefit of Node on the road is that we're actually taking it out of like the Bay Area and making sure that people know that you can participate in this process without having to be in the Bay Area. You can inform the roadmap. You can make sure that your issues are being addressed by actually participating in the community. And this community is fantastic. They love Node. They're so enthusiastic about it. The conversations happen so naturally that it's just easy for the project to start moving forward for them.
Absolutely. And any plans to bring it to London anytime soon?
There are plans to bring it to London. We're excited to bring it. We have, after Lisbon, we're doing Amsterdam, but then hopefully we're aiming for the fall to be able to come back from London and actually do a big event in London, kind of similar in size to what we did in New York, which was a smashing success.
Awesome. And so talk to me, what are the things about Node in the future that excite you? I mentioned Internet of Things. I don't think anyone really knows what Internet of Things actually is or means. I've heard about 20 different definitions of it.
It's like cloud.
Yeah, it's like cloud. It's the cloud of devices now. But it definitely, Node seems to fit quite nicely into whatever definition people tend to come up with.
Yeah.
And what excites you? Where do you see the roadmap personally? What are the things that you think Node can really achieve over the next couple of years?
So one of the things I've been working on is getting a stable C API and ABI that we can use for binary modules. We can also then implement that for the internals of Node. And when we have that environment, we can abstract away our dependency on V8, and then that enables a whole new world of machines that we can run on, because there are certainly machines that V8 is never going to run on, and we can be able to then satisfy, like if somebody wanted to run it on SpiderMonkey or on JavaScript core, then you have the ability to reach out to iOS devices or boot to Gecko devices, or wherever you have something that can present a JavaScript model and run JavaScript, we can now put Node, and which kind of makes it so JavaScript's the default language of the web. It would be awesome if Node was the default integration API for communicating with the web as well. So I think that's the exciting part about Node, is like getting it out there and being that glue layer that it is for so many things, not just on the server side now, but in the devices world as well.
Cool. And I got to ask, you mentioned dtrace there briefly, and I know for a lot of things Node is just an abstraction layer on top of the core OS and a variety of things. Is anyone enjoying thinking about porting dtrace to other environments? I mean, it's a big pain point, and it's a big thing for us. Like it's one of the biggest things you can use for debugging and troubleshooting. And
yeah,
I mean, in particular, Debian environments, a lot of people trying to use it there.
Yeah. So dtrace is a fantastic technology. It's really tied closely to the kernel that it's implemented. In this case, joint usage is through SmartOS, its own operating system, which is a derivative of Illumos, and Solaris heritage. So you have people with Solaris, and it also works on FreeBSD and OS X. But those operating systems ported it there. It's a really big undertaking to try and port it to a new environment like, say, Linux kernel. Joint's been working on alternate ways to try and bring that to people in Linux environments without having to invest in yet another kernel.
Yep.
So that's kind of where Joint's taking it, but we're excited. I worked hard to make SystemTap and KTap work in a very similar way for Node as much as we can. Yep. So our existing probes and the probes that you're going to be able to add in user space are going to be able to work on Linux in a very similar kind of fashion. So hopefully that will at least stem some of the gaps, or fill some of the gaps that people are having where they don't have dtrace on Linux. But hopefully we'll have a story about that soon.
Cool. And finally, I know you're a very well-traveled man, thanks to your job at Joyent. You spending much time at home recently?
Not. This has been a particularly rough month for me, but I'm excited to get back after NodeConf at the end of this week. I'll be able to be in my apartment and working and getting everything I need to get done.
And so, how does Lisbon and LXJS and this awesome environment kind of measure on your scale of travels recently?
This is a fantastic experience. I mean, NodeConf EU last year was a castle. I really feel like LXJS totally stepped it up with this event. So it's fantastic.
Well, I know the guys at LXJS will love to have you back again next year. So thanks for talking to us, and hopefully we'll see you again next year. Cool.
Thanks.